from your weather authority, your KTAB Forecast First.
Good evening, Big Country. Well, if you haven't become friends with your jacket, you might want to do so tonight. Some of our areas at or below freezing already. Expect that patchy fog and maybe some frost across the area in the morning hours, so give yourself a few extra minutes for that morning commute. Those clouds will increase throughout the afternoon hours. It's going to be a cool and breezy day with those winds out of the south at 10 to 15 miles per hour. And yes, occasional wind gusts up to 25 miles per hour. Highs near seasonable, topping out into those mid-50s. That's a look at your forecast first. KTAB News at 10 starts now.
With coverage you can count on. This is KTAB News at 10.
Good evening. Thank you for choosing KTAB News. Coverage you can count on. I'm Stacy Lopez.
And I'm Bob Bartlett. Tonight's top story takes us back 24 hours to the scene of a fatal accident just east of Abilene. We now know the identity of the man killed in the accident on Interstate 20 between Abilene and Clyde. We
brought you the breaking coverage here on KTAB News at 10. Daniel Lynn Shea of Abilene was pronounced dead at the scene. A report from DPS indicates that Shea's vehicle was traveling the wrong way on Interstate 20 when it struck the vehicle of Rodolfo Cardona. Both vehicles overturned, landing off the highway. The report also says Shea was not wearing a seatbelt at the time of the crash. The second driver involved was transported to Hendrick Medical Center with critical injuries. The crash is still under investigation.
Turning to crime news, Abilene police releasing comments today just ahead of the second anniversary of the murder of 54-year-old Tom Niblo. He was shot and killed inside his home in the 3700 block of Woodridge Drive in Abilene, and police are still looking for his killer. Niblo was shot and killed while lying in his bed on December 12, 2016. And since then, it's been a case that has had investigators guessing from the beginning. There are no signs of forced entry at the house. Abilene Police Chief Stan Standridge told KTAB News following the murder, more than 30 search warrants have been executed with countless items of evidence seized. Niblo's brother-in-law, Luke Switzer, remains the only publicly named person of interest in the case. Court documents reveal a dispute between the family over a will led to many arguments that would escalate quickly. Chief Standridge also tells KTAB Abilene Police remain the lead agency in the case, but they are receiving help from the FBI.
Acting on a tip, Abilene police arrest two late this afternoon. The teenagers were driving a stolen car. The two led police on a chase through North Abilene in the stolen vehicle. The pursuit began around 4 at the intersection of North 18th and Kirkwood Streets. Police tell KTAB News at the scene that the two boys, a juvenile and a 17-year-old, are accused of stealing a car from the 1600 block of Kirkwood this morning. The owner was warming up the SUV in the driveway when it was taken.
2 adults and a baby are okay after a rollover accident in North Abilene this afternoon. It happened at the intersection of Cottonwood and North 7th Streets around 2. Police at the scene tell KTAB News the driver turned around to grab the baby's pacifier when he lost control, causing the vehicle to flip onto its roof. All 3 were evaluated at the scene and none had injuries. A solemn procession continues at the U.S. Capitol tonight as Americans pay tribute to former President George Herbert Walker Bush.
Mola Lengi is at the Capitol, where President Bush lies in state.
The family of George Herbert Walker Bush made a surprise visit to the U.S. Capitol Tuesday night to shake hands, offer hugs, and thank Americans who came to memorialize the late 41st president. Former President George W. Bush even lifted up a baby, much to the crowd's delight. Earlier in the day, former Senate Majority Leader Bob Dole was helped to his feet to stand and salute the late president. Both men are World War II veterans. Disabled Americans who benefited from the Americans with Disabilities Act that Mr. Bush signed into law were there, along with Sully, Mr. Bush's service dog. Sports luminaries like Peyton Manning and Phil Mickelson stood solemnly nearby. Outside the Capitol, a steady stream of Americans waited in long lines.
Just to be next to a president that we loved a lot. We're actually from Texas ourselves, so It was very emotional.
President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump met briefly with former President George W. Bush and former First Lady Laura Bush at Blair House, where they're staying. Visitors will be able to file past the casket at the Capitol until 7 a.m. Wednesday morning, when the former president will be transported to Washington National Cathedral for funeral services. All of the living presidents are expected to be in attendance. Afterward, Mr. Bush's body will be flown home to Houston, Texas, where he'll be buried Thursday. Mola Lengi, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
All right, thank you, Mola. President Trump has declared tomorrow a national day of mourning. All federal offices, some state offices, the stock market, and the Postal Service will be closed. KTAB will devote tomorrow night's 6 p.m. newscast to remembering President Bush. CBS will provide live coverage of events throughout the day, and then KTAB will be remembering President George H.W. Bush on KTAB News at 6 tomorrow evening. Well, serving almost 50 years for the Gorman Volunteer Fire Department and 40 of those years as chief, United States Air Force veteran Gene Foster is laid to rest today at the Texas State Veterans Cemetery with his fellow firefighters there to say their goodbyes.
KTAB's Claire Kreitz was there too and has this Eye on the Big Country report.
It was an honor to be his friend, and also it was an honor to bring him to his final resting place.
A somber day for the Gorman Volunteer Fire Department and the city of Gorman.
He was one of our pillars of the community and also the fire department. He kept us all pretty well straight.
Laying to rest one of their own, Gene Foster, a United States Air Force veteran and longtime Gorman VFD firefighter.
We really admired Gene for his longevity in the fire department, and we also wanted to bring him all the way to his resting place.
Serving with the department for 49 years, almost 40 of those as chief.
It was a very important part of his life. He dedicated a lot of time and a lot of years to better the department and to get it to where it is.
But his dedication reached outside of the department into the community he loved.
Anytime a fundraiser, he went out, always the first one out, trying to do everything he could to help out the community in the fire department.
He was a real outstanding person to the community of Gorman and throughout the county.
In Abilene with coverage you can count on, Claire Kreitz, KTAB News.
Thank you, Claire. Foster died from a stroke, but was still answering fire calls up until the last day.
The B-21 bomber, which soon could call Dyess Air Force Base home, is moving along in its development process. Right now, the B-1B Lancer flies from Dyess and will still be part of the Air Force inventory for another 15 or 20 years or longer. The B-21 long-range strike bomber is still on paper and in a computer, but the Air Force says everything remains on schedule. The first B-21 is expected to be operational by the mid-2020s. And sticking with Dyess news, the base will be taking part in the Joint Forcible Entry exercise this weekend. The nighttime exercise will combine 13 units from across the Air Force. Approximately 30 C-130s will launch from Dyess, and once in the air, the C-130 crews will work with ground troops to sharpen skills. The exercise begins Saturday at 5 p.m.
Keeping our eye on Abilene, the city manager addresses the employment status of Abilene Animal Services Director Miranda Walden. With an absence from her job in recent weeks and the Abilene Animal Services job listed as vacant on the city's website, City Manager Robert Hanna confirms to KTAB News that Miranda Walden resigned from her job following an investigation into an unknown complaint by a City of Abilene employee. The nature of the complaint has not been disclosed, but city officials did confirm no criminal activity is involved.
Nothing criminal, there's no animal abuse, cruelty charges, there's no, this does not involve anything other than just how we treat each other.
Hannah says a firm will be hired to help fill the Abilene Animal Services Director's job, and he said the resignation of Zoo Director Bill Gersonde during an investigation is not related to the Walden investigation and resignation.
Still ahead on KTAB News at 10, HEB shares a feast with visitors in downtown Abilene.
And next, time is ticking to be a Santa's helper. How you can help KTAB bring smiles to big country children.
And Noel is in for Sam, and he has our forecast. Hey, Noel.
That's right. Well, Santa's helper might be bringing a fluffy animal to your doorstep tonight. It's going to be a very cold one out there this evening. Temperature staying below average for the rest of this work week. A strong cold front is set to arrive on your Thursday afternoon. This will only increase those rain chances Thursday. Things can get a little bit icky by Friday evening and Saturday. I'm going to time out that cold front and what to expect coming up next.
With coverage you can count on. Bob Bartlett, Stacy Lopez, and Chief Meteorologist Sam Nichols. This is KTAB.